Greetings, Shalom, welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today we are resuming this study that we started that was really about examining what took place with Nimrod and the Tower of Babel according to an ancient text called the Book of Jasher. And due to your responses, I have decided to continue the study, at least for now, as the story transitions into the life of Abram. Now, it kind of ended or our last reading would have been of chapter 9, which kind of dealt with the dispersion, right? The tower, all of that took place in chapter 9. And God came down and scattered the people, scattered the languages. Chapter 10 is just genealogy. And in chapter 11, which is where we're going to begin this morning, kind of deals with the beginning of Abraham's, we'll call it adult life, even though he's really about 40. But when people are still living 200 years, 40 is still pretty young, right? And the big theme of this story has to do with Abraham rebelling against one of the biggest sin problems on the earth in that time, and especially in that particular kingdom, which was the sin of idolatry. Worshipping carved images made by men's hands, and then they would worship them. And Abraham's going to go out of his way to point out how absurd this is. And then the story will end with Abram's father, Terah, who is the creator of these idols, turning against him. So it's an interesting little story about how Abraham goes about pointing out this absurdity that a man would carve an image and then believe that it's an actual God. But what he's going to point out is that you don't actually believe this is God. Not when push comes to shove, not deep down. It's just men worshiping things for the sake of worshiping things. Again, pointing out just the human condition, the tragedy of the fallen man. All right, so there's the background. I'm going to read to you chapter 11. It's a fairly long chapter, so I probably won't interrupt too much. There is, however, a few statements that Abraham makes where I will chime in and point to a reminder of some text in the book of Peter and some things that Jesus said. Okay. Open up your hearts and let's begin. Chapter 11, verse 1. And Nimrod, son of Cush, was still in the land of Shinar, and he reigned over it and dwelt there, and he built cities in the land of Shinar. So please note, it's letting us know that, hey, even though there was this big dispersion of people and everybody was scattered and the languages were confused and the tower fell, all of that, Nimrod was still ruling over that province, basically. Still ruling over Shinar. He was still building cities. He was still the greatest king on earth. Continuing on. And these are the names of the 4 cities which he built. And he called their names after the occurrences that happened to them in the building of the tower. And he called the first Babel, saying, because the Lord there confounded the language of the whole earth. And the name of the second he called Arak, because from there God dispersed him. And the third he called Ached, saying, there was a great battle at that place. And the fourth he called Cana, because his prince and mighty men were consumed there. And they vexed the Lord. They rebelled and transgressed against him. And when Nimrod had built these cities in the land of Shinar, he placed them in the remainder of his people, his princes and his mighty men that were left in his kingdom. And Nimrod dwelt in Babel, and there renewed his reign over the rest of his subjects. And he reigned securely, and his subjects and princes of Nimrod called his name Amraphel, saying that at the tower his princes and men fell through his means. And notwithstanding this, Nimrod did not return to the Lord. He continued in wickedness, and teaching wickedness to the sons of men. And Mardon his son was worse than his father, and continued to add to the abomination of his father. And he caused the sons of men to sin. Therefore it was said, from the wicked go forth wickedness. At that time there was a war between the families of the children of Ham, and they were dwelling in the cities which they had built. And Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, went away from the families of the children of Ham, and he fought with them, and he subdued them, and he went to the 5 cities of the plain, and he fought against them, and subdued them, and they were under his control. And he served him 12 years, and they gave him a yearly tax. At that time Nahor, son of Serug, in the 49th year of the life of Abram, son of Terah, and in the 50th year of the life of Abram, son of Terah, Abram came forth from the house of Noah and went to his father's house. All right, so please note, I said in the beginning that I think Abraham was 40. He was actually 50. Still, if you're going to live 200 years, that's not too old. And so it just gives you a little historical background. Nimrod's still ruling over these cities. He kind of reestablishes himself and his authority, but he doesn't actually return to God, even though the Lord clearly came down, scattered the people, scattered the languages. Instead, he doubles down on his wickedness. And he's extremely wicked, but then his son is more wicked than he is, and the proverb comes about, which says, from the wicked goes forth wickedness, and he continues to teach the sons of men to worship idols and continues to teach them evil practices. Continuing on. So, at 50 years old, Abram moves into his father's house now. So he's no longer kind of like with Noah. He's moving into his father's house now. It's been 50 years. No one remembers the prophecy about Abram. No one remembers any of this, right? It's forgotten knowledge at this point. Okay. And Abram knew the Lord, and he went in his ways and instructions. And the Lord his God was with him. And Terah his father was in those days still captain of the host of King Nimrod, and he still followed strange gods. And Abram came to his father's house and saw 12 gods standing there in the temple. And the anger of Abram was kindled when he saw those images in his father's house. And Abram said, as the Lord liveth, these images shall not remain in my father's house. So shall the Lord who created me do unto me, if in 3 days' time I do not break them all. And Abram went from them, and his anger burned within him. And Abram hastened and went forth to the chambers to his father's outer court. And he found his father sitting in the court, and all of his servants with him. And Abram came and sat before him. And Abram asked his father, saying, Father, tell me, where is God who created heaven and earth, and all the sons of men upon the earth? And who created thee and me? And Terah answered his son Abram and said, Behold, those who created us are with us in the house. And Abram said to his father, My lord, show them to me, I pray thee. And Terah brought Abram into the chamber, into the inner court. And Abram saw, and behold, the whole room was full of gods of wood and stone, 12 great images, and others less, and they were without number. And Terah said to his son, Behold, these are they which made all thou seest upon the earth, and which created me and thee and all mankind. And Terah bowed down to his gods, and then he went away from them. And Abram his son went away with him. And when Abram had gone from them, he went to his mother and sat before her, and he said to his mother, Behold, my father has shown me those who made heaven and earth, and all the sons of men. Now therefore hasten, and fetch a kid from the flock, and make it a savory meat, that I may bring it to my father's gods, an offering for them to eat. Perhaps I may thereby become acceptable to them. And his mother did so, and she fetched a kid, and made a savory meat thereof, and brought it to Abram. And Abram took the savory meat from his mother, and brought it before his father's gods. And he drew nigh to them, that they might eat. And Terah his father did not know of it. And Abram saw on the day, when he was sitting amongst them, that they had no voice, no hearing, no motion, and not one of them could stretch forth his hand to eat. And Abram mocked them, and said, Surely the savory meat that I prepared has not pleased them, or perhaps it was too little for them. And for that reason they would not eat. Therefore tomorrow I will prepare fresh savory meat, better and more plentiful than this, in order that I may see the result. And it was on the next day that Abram directed his mother concerning the savory meat. And his mother rose and fetched there 3 fine kids from the flock, and she made of them some excellent savory meat, such as her son was fond of. And she gave it to her son Abram, and Terah his father did not know of it. And Abram took the savory meat from his mother, and he brought it before his father's gods into the chamber, and he came nigh unto them that they might eat. And he placed it before them, and Abram sat before them all day, thinking perhaps they might eat. And Abram viewed them, and behold, they had neither voice nor hearing, nor did one of them stretch forth his hand to the meat to eat. And in the evening of that day, in the house Abram was clothed with the Spirit of God. And he called out and he said, Woe unto my father, and this wicked generation, whose hearts are inclined to vanity, who serve these idols of wood, and some which can neither eat, smell, hear, nor speak, who have mouths without speech, eyes without sight, ears without hearing, hands without feeling, and legs which cannot move. Like them are those that made them, and trust in them. So please note, he makes the comment about, now he's clothed in the Spirit of God, and his anger kindles, and he makes the comment, how silly this is, right? I mean, you've got these statues. They have ears, but they can't hear anything. They have eyes, and they can't see anything. They have legs, but they can't walk. But like them are those who made them. Blind, deaf, right? Sounds a lot like how Jesus described the religious leaders of his days. You think you can see, but you're blind, you're deaf, you have no idea. And when Abram saw all these things, his anger was kindled against his father. And he hastened, and he took a hatchet in his hand. And he came into the chambers of the gods, and he broke all of his father's gods. And when he had done breaking the image, he placed the hatchet in the hand of the great God, which was there before them. And he went out, and Terah his father came home, for he had heard at the door the sound of the striking of the hatchet. So Terah came into the house to know what this was about. And Terah, having heard the noise of the hatchet in the room of images, ran to the room to the images, and he met Abram going out. And Terah entered the room and found all the idols fallen down and broken, and the hatchet in the hand of the largest, which was not broken. And the savory meat which Abram his son had made was still before them. And when Terah saw this, his anger was greatly kindled, and he hastened and he went from the room to Abram. And he found Abram his son still sitting in the house, and he said to him, What is this work thou hast done to my gods? And Abraham said, Terah his father, and he said, Not so, my lord, for I brought savory meat before them, and when I came nigh to them with the meat that they might eat, they all at once stretched forth their hands to eat before the great one had put forth his hand to eat. And the large one saw their works that they did before him, and his anger was violently kindled against them. And he went and he took the hatchet that was in the house, and came to them, and broke them all. And behold, the hatchet is yet in his hand, thou seest. And Terah's anger was kindled against his son Abram when he spoke this. And Terah said to Abram his son in his anger, What is this tale that thou hast told? Thou speakest lies to me. Is there in these gods spirits, soul, or power to do all that you have told me? Are they not wood and stone, and have I not myself made them? And canst thou speak lies, saying that the large God did that with them, smote them? Is thou that did this place the hatchet in his hands? And then sayest, he smote them all. Okay, so please note, this part of the story always kills me. But it's just perfect, though, at the same time, because this is the stupidity of idol worship. And it still happens to this very day. So Terah, just a day or two ago in this story, is telling Abram that these gods are the ones who made the heaven and the earth and made all people, and then he bows down to them and worships them and then leaves the room. But when Abram tells him this story that the big one rose up against all the small ones and chopped them up with a hatchet because they dared to try to eat the savory meat first, Terah knows that that's complete and utter silliness. And he even points it out. Why would you tell me this ridiculous story? They don't have souls. They can't move. I made them with my own hands. So he admits that they're just nothing but wood and stone. After all, he made them with his own hands. You see the fallacy, the silliness of this whole thing. But this is how it works. And I'm telling you, men are not any wiser today than they were at this time. Let's continue on the story. And Abram answered his father and said to him, And how canst thou then serve these idols in whom there is no power to do anything? Can those idols in which thou trustest deliver thee? Can they hear thy prayers when thou callest upon them? Can they deliver thee from the hands of thy enemies? Or will they fight thy battles for thee against thy enemies, that thou shouldest serve wood and stone, which can neither speak nor hear? And now surely it is not good for thee, nor for the sons of men that are connected with thee, to do these things. Are you so silly, so foolish, so short of understanding, that you will serve wood and stone, and do it after this manner? And forget the Lord God who made heaven and earth, and who created you in the earth, and therefore bring a great evil upon your souls in this matter by serving stone and wood. Did not our fathers in the day of old sin in this matter? And the Lord God of the universe brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed the whole earth. And how can you continue to do this, and serve gods of wood and stone, and cannot hear, cannot speak, or deliver you from oppression, therefore bringing down the anger of the God of the universe upon you? Please note. So Abraham says, have you already forgotten about the flood and what transpired there? I found this interesting because we've been doing our study Faith and Works, and we've just wrapped up our study in the epistles of Peter, where he brings up this exact same point, talking about the end times, the end of days. He's like, at that point, people will they'll be completely ignorant about the flood and about how God is willing to judge the whole earth. And they'll also be kind of ignorant about, Sodom and Gomorrah, where God rained down fire and brimstone, annihilating those cities, making them an example to those who would afterwards live ungodly in that way. And isn't that the time that we are living in? There truly is nothing new under the sun. We're living in a time when, again, we have a whole generation of human beings who do not fear God, who are ignorant about the flood. They think it's just a made-up fairy tale in a book. They're ignorant about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. In fact, they openly rebel in the same manner, and they do not think judgment is coming. They do not think fire will rain from the sky. But it will. That's just something that jumped out at me that I wanted to share real quick. Let's get back to the story. We got a little bit further to go. Abraham's saying this to his father. Have you forgotten about the flood? Do you not know how God responds to a whole generation that's gone after this kind of wickedness? And why would you serve gods that you know and admit cannot breathe, cannot walk, cannot deliver you, cannot do anything for you? You admit you made them with your own hands. How can you continue to do this? Now therefore, my father, refrain from this, and bring not evil upon thy soul and the souls of thy household. And Abram hastened and sprang from before his father, and took the hatchet from his father's largest idol, which Abram broke it, and ran away. And Terah, seeing all that Abram had done, hastened to go from the house, and he went to the king. And he came before Nimrod, and he stood before him, and he bowed down to the king. And the king said, What dost thou want? And he said, I beseech thee, my lord, to hear me. Now 50 years back a child was born to me, and thus has done to my gods, and thus has spoken. And now therefore, my lord and king, send for him that he may come before thee, and judge him according to the law, that we may be delivered from this evil. Please note, this is important to point out. When people have their pet doctrines and their idols, and you come against that, look what's happening here. Abram's own father, who risked everything to save him when he was little, now 50 years later is asking the king to come arrest him. Because he's got his little pet doctrines and his little idols, and those are his little pets, and don't you dare attack the pets. People act like this today. People think that if they lived during Nazi Germany, they'd be the ones to be rescuing people, and they'd be the ones to be standing up against it. How could they turn in their neighbors and their loved ones? Well, you don't have to look any further than going back 4 years ago. Go back to 2020. I haven't forgotten how people acted. And how people who went to the same church that I go to, what the things they were saying on Facebook. If it had been a little bit worse, where they were sending military and police force and things like that to arrest people who refused to comply with the nonsense that was happening in 2020, those same people, some of them family, some of them church members, some of them neighbors, they'd be on the phone with glee and joy in their hearts to turn in their neighbors. Because it's that hive mind, weird, I don't even know how to put labels on it, but it becomes a god to them. And we live in a generation where whatever the state says and whatever comes out of the bobbing heads on the black screen of death say, that is their religion. And even though it's foolishness, and even though deep down they know it's foolishness, they will have you killed to protect it. That is how sickening it is. It's like a disease. Same thing going on with Terah here. This is his own son. He doesn't care. The idols are his idols, and don't mess with his idols. Doesn't matter if there's any real logic or reasoning that can be had. It's his idols. It's no different today. What people are protecting might be different, but it's still some weird worship, right? All right, we're almost done. And the king sent 3 men of his servants, and they went and they brought Abram before the king, and Nimrod and all the princes and servants were that day sitting before him. And Terah sat also before them. And the king said to Abram, "What is this that thou hast done to thy father and to his gods?" And Abram answered the king in the words that he spoke to his father, and he said, "The large God that was with them in the house did so to them what thou hast heard." And the king said to Abram, "Had they power to speak and to eat and to do all thou hast said?" And Abram answered the king, saying, "And if there be no power in them, why dost thou serve them, and cause the sons of men to err through thy follies? Dost thou imagine that they can deliver thee, or do anything small or great, that thou shouldest serve them? And why will thou not sense the God of the whole universe, who created thee, in whose power is it to kill and keep alive? O foolish, simple, and ignorant king, woe unto thee forever. I thought that thou would teach thy servants the upright way, but thou hast not done this. Thou hast filled the whole earth with thy sins, and with the sins of thy people who have followed thy ways. Dost thou not know, or hast thou not heard, that this evil which thou doest, our ancestors sinned therein in the days of old, and the eternal God brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed them all, and also destroyed the whole earth on their account? And will thou and thy people rise up now and do like unto this work, in the order to bring down the anger of the Lord God of the universe, and bring evil upon thee and the whole earth?" Please note we're almost done, like 3 or 4 verses, but that's the question I'm asking today. Why are we doing this evil and calling it good and trying to force it on children, and it's just getting worse and more grotesque and more perverse and more disgusting? Have you not heard how God responds to this? And the people mock and they sneer and they laugh and they get angry and they want to lock you up and they want to censor you and they want to silence you. Nothing new, my friends. Nothing new. Now therefore put away this evil deed which thou doest, and serve the God of the universe as thy soul in his hands, and then it will be well with thee. And if the wicked heart will not hearken to my words, to cause thee to forsake thy evil ways, and to serve the eternal God, then wilt thou die in shame in the latter days, thou and thy people and all who are connected with thee, hearing thy words or walking in thy evil ways. And when Abram had ceased speaking before the king and princes, Abram lifted up his eyes to the heavens and said, "The Lord seeth all the wicked, and will judge them." And that, my friend, is how chapter 11 ends. This broadcast took a little longer than normal, so no long closing remarks. I just hope that you were blessed and strengthened. I want to thank all of you who pray for me and pray for my family, and those of you who support this mission of truth. It's far beyond what I deserve, and I couldn't do it without you. Thank you for listening. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.